life, I have to say that I have a triplet grandchildren, those of you who know, and one of the girls, Lucy, we were talking, or I was talking, and just talking about things that were happening and whatever. She was talking about her school and this and that. And then finally she said something very profound. She said, well, that's life, grandmother. I mean, just at the right time, you know, in the right place. Well, that's life. And are we having a life or what? In this world, and not mentioning in our families and in our work relationships, is some ride, isn't it? I'm going to talk about leap of faith today. The Unity Worldwide Ministries theme for 2019 is One Humanity, Many Stories, and the sub-theme for the month of November is Demonstration, okay? And so I've titled my talk this morning, Leap of Faith. It took courage to come here to the planet at this time, I'm going to tell you that. But first I want to begin with some levity. A Sunday school teacher asked her class of kindergartners, if I sold my car, had a big garage sale, and gave all my money to the church, would that get me into heaven? No, the children all answered. Well, if I also cleaned the church every day, mowed the yard, and kept everything neat and tidy, would that get me into heaven? Again, the answer was no. Well then, if I was also kind to animals and gave candy to all the children and loved all my neighbors, would that get me into heaven? And once more, they all answered no. Well, she continued, thinking that they were a bit more theologically sophisticated than she had given them credit for. Well then, how can I get into heaven? And a 5-year-old boy shouted out, you gotta be dead. From the mouth of babes, I love them. You gotta be dead first. This morning's two lesson scriptures are from the book of Hebrews, 11th chapter, 1st verse. Now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. And from the book of Mark, chapter 10, verse 27. And Jesus, looking upon them, said, with men it is impossible, but not with God, for with God all things are possible. Every week, Daniel prayed to win the lottery. And at the end of the week, when he didn't win, he grumbled that his prayer had not been answered. And finally, after many weeks of missing the jackpot, he angrily stormed the altar of his church, raised his clenched fist and railed, if you're such a great God, why don't I have any money? I've been praying a long time and I haven't won a dime. If you don't help me win the lottery soon, I'm going to have to become an atheist. Suddenly, a great voice boomed from a broke boy above. The least you could do, Daniel, is to buy a lottery ticket. You see, and this is all of us at times, while Daniel did come to God with his prayer request, he did pray, he was not doing his part. It's stuff we need to do to assist God. The power of prayer becomes real only when we act on our prayers, when we act as if we believe them. An old African proverb says, pray and then move your feet. When you and I take a step in the direction of our vision, we're demonstrating that we believe our goal and that we are willing to do and to be whatever it takes to manifest it. Then miracles begin as powerful universe. The powerful universe is like an ally and rallies and supports us in a million ways we could never have planned. We've all experienced that. You could not even have imagined how wonderful something could turn out. In the movie Jerry Maguire, Tom Cruise plays a sports agent, and he's pleading with his client, played by Cuba Gooding Jr. Help me to help you. God, our ultimate agent, if you will, needs our help to help us help ourselves. And comedian Sam Levinson quipped, "The helping hand you and I have been looking for is at the end of our own arms." Okay? And the late Cardinal Spellman advised, "Pray as if it all depends on you, and act as if it all depends on you." Because of course it does. You see, our actions give form to the request, or to the chalice, quote unquote, that God will fill. Our dreams are worthy of our efforts and don't be put off by statistics and fear or the negativity of others. Earth is a place where we grow spiritual muscles. And just like physical muscles, we have to work at that. And we participate in this adventure called life. And we don't need to worry about so-called failing, even if the vision doesn't turn out the way that you and I expect it to. At least we know that we gave it our all. We did the best we could with what we had, and it was good enough. The only real failure is in giving up, not trying at all. Life is not about having gifts just dropped into our laps, although that would be nice. But that's not the way it is. It's about claiming our powers as co-creators with God. Don't expect God to generate your life and have this plan all detailed out for you. Expect God to help you create your purpose, your vision. And then as you and I become responsible for our own success, we enter into a small group of dedicated souls that the world calls enlightened ones or masters. You know, I think of a Deepak Chopra or Martin Luther King Jr. You know, I invite you this morning to think about what it is. What is yours to do? I've thought about this a lot. What is your gift to give? I mean, what is your contribution to this life? What are you doing here? What is your contribution to this world? What is your contribution to this church? What is calling to you personally? How would you like to serve in your heart of hearts? Not what somebody else thinks you should or shouldn't do. The late Muhammad Ali is quoted as saying, "Service to others is the rent you pay for your room here on earth." I would say amen to that. And in 1917, former slave scientist and Tuskegee Institute founder George Washington Carver revealed what motivated him. And I quote, "Well, someday I will have to leave this world. And when that day comes, I want to feel that my life has been of some service to my fellow man." And when he passed away in 1943, it would seem that he had lived just such a life. Right now, up close and personal opportunities for service abound in this church ministry, okay? I don't know if it was in the announcements today, but I know we've got an annual meeting going on after the service at 1 o'clock and after our food fellowship time. Does serving in some capacity at Unity of Columbus speak to you? Is this your calling? And if it is, are you willing to step forward? Are you willing to act on it? There's a need. You know, sometimes our most important prayers require a leap of faith. In other words, to move ahead, we've got to let go of the world that we have equated with, security and step into uncharted territory. At some point, we're going to inevitably find ourselves hesitating on the brink of some unknown, wondering whether we're divinely inspired or just plain crazy. Think, why did I say I don't do such and such or such and such? Maybe I'm just talking about myself. Because you see, behind us lies the past, which is no longer acceptable, or we wouldn't be feeling this discomfort now. And ahead of us is a questionable future. What do I do now? We all come to those impasses at times in our life. You might want to go to or online to Netflix or whatever, to the local library, and rewatch the film Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Remember that one? You may remember that at the climax of the movie, after Indy has endured all manner of trials and ordeals in his search for the chalice of Christ, meaning the holy veil, he finds himself at the edge of a seemingly bottomless chasm. On the other side of the abyss is the temple where the Holy Grail awaits. Indy looks down and sees no possible way to cross this endless pit. And then he remembers the advice given to him about what he must remember when he reaches his last test, which is the test of faith. And Indiana draws a deep breath, releases his foothold on the edge, and steps out into what seems to be sheer nothingness. But a bridge suddenly appears under Indy's foot, and he suddenly has the support he needs. His step, he had to take that first step, having activated, and he soon retrieves the Holy Grail and carries it to the lips of his dying father, whose life is saved by drinking from the sacred cup. And this scene reminded me of that it's a metaphor for all leaps of faith. You and I must step forward, no matter how difficult it seems, with total trust in the unseen presence, God. If we wait until we're sure we got it together, it'll be too late. And we'll miss out on the whole purpose of our test of faith, which was to develop spiritual muscles in the first place, and to develop confidence in ourselves and in the unseen presence that we call God. I mean, if we already know how we'll accomplish our mission, faith is not required. You do 1, 2, 3, and then you get there. You know that. In the book of Hebrews, 11th chapter, verse 1, we're told, well, that faith, as I said earlier, is the assurance of things hoped for. And then this other part's what gets us, the conviction of things not seen. Excuse me? Well, maybe I'll rethink that. But if you and I don't know how we're going to achieve our goal, and we forge ahead anyway, we're mobilizing the power of faith, which attracts and magnetizes the mightiest results that we could not even have thought of initially. Jesus says in John 20:29, because you have seen me, you have believed. But blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed. Our faith is made real only by acting on it. We cannot claim to have faith unless we are simultaneously doing it, demonstrating it. And it takes great courage to move ahead when we don't know how our dream will come true. But somehow, something in us says we know that it will. We know that that's the purpose for our life at this time. And acts of trust are rewarded in proportion to the leap of faith that it takes to achieve them. So the harder it seems, those are the ones that bring the highest results. Long shots pay the highest return. Our investment is belief. And God's response is seemingly a miraculous demonstration. The unity movement defines miracles as the higher outworking of universal laws. I'm not talking about something really weird way out, but the higher outworking of universal laws. The people who have changed the world, beginning with their own lives, were not just thinkers, but doers, demonstrators. To know and not to do is not to know, because if you know, you should be doing better, right? Many are those who've talked about truth, yet few are those who've actually lived it. In November of 1971 in London, England, about a young man, a talented architect who had decided to kill himself. And he was going to jump in front of the next train that rolled into the station. And after a few minutes, the young man heard the faint rumbling of an approaching train. And he inched to the edge of the platform where he watched the subway headlights reflecting off the tracks. And as it got closer, he took one last deep breath to calm himself. As it rounded the curve, he jumped. The engineer saw the young man jump, and he instinctively reached for the brake. And even as he did so, he knew it would be too late, for there was no way that he could stop that train in time to save that young man. The front car had already begun to roll over the man lying there on the tracks. And just when it seemed as though they were going to crush him completely, the train screeched to a stop. The engineer stood there amazed. He knew that his brake had not supported the train, but what did? Firemen and ambulance attendants scrambled to the scene. They couldn't believe how close the man had come to getting killed. He was squeezed so tightly under the first car that they had to get special equipment to jack up the train and free him. But the man was alive and he was unhurt. I tell you, there are higher laws. In the meantime, subway officials had arrested a man who was on the same train. They charged him with pulling the emergency brake. That's the brake which locks all brakes on the train. And he did it for no reason that they could come up with, so they arrested him. And they planned to take him to court when they discovered that it was the emergency brake and not the engineer's brake that had stopped the train and saved the young architect's life. This is true. Once they heard this, they quickly dropped all charges against the man. Now here's the strange thing about the incident and why I'm relating it this morning. The man who pulled the emergency brake was much too far back on the train to see anyone jumping off the subway platform. Yet he managed to pull the brake at just the right time. If he had waited a second or two longer, it would have been too late. So if he couldn't see anyone, why did he pull the brake? When some subway officials asked him, he couldn't give them a plausible explanation. He said that all he knew was that he suddenly, out of the blue, had an uncontrollable urge to get up, walk over to the side of the railway car, and pull the brake. He didn't find out until months later that this so-called out-of-the-blue, uncontrollable urge had saved a man's life. Do not let yourself be restricted by your own thought. Your dream can be as big as your concept of God. No idea can get through the mind that thinks it's impossible. You can believe this morning that this dream is possible with God and that it can be done no matter how it looks to the world or even how it may look to you. You don't know. You just have to keep moving towards your dream and be willing and ready to be redirected at any moment as you proceed towards your dream becoming a reality. In Matthew 14:22, Jesus made the disciples get into a boat and to go on ahead to the other side while he dismissed the crowds. And after he had dismissed the crowds, he went up the mountain himself to pray by himself. And when evening came, he was there alone. But by this time, the boat, battered by the waves, was far from land, for the wind was against them. And early in the morning, he came walking toward them on the sea. But when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified, saying, "It is a ghost," and they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them and said, "Take heart. It is I, do not be afraid." And Peter answered him, "Lord, if it's you, command me to come to you on the water." And he said, "Come." So Peter got out of the boat, started walking on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he noticed the strong wind, he became frightened and began to sink, and he cried out, "Lord, save me, save me." And Jesus reached out his hand and caught him, saying to him, "O ye of little faith, why did you doubt?" When they got into the boat, the wind ceased, and those in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." Now, like you, I've heard many ministers give many sermons on how Peter was a failure because he sank in the water. Peter wasn't a failure at all, I tell you this morning, because he had the experience. The 11 others didn't even try. Peter tried. You and I don't fail when we try. Peter had the glory of actually walking on the water, and then he had the grace of being lifted. So will you and I when we dare to go after our dream. And we often say things like, "It came to me out of the blue." Well, have you ever thought about, where is the blue? What's about it? Well, I think it's God's miracles coming through you and me into our lives. And we should never, ever measure our dreams from where we are. We measure them from where God is. Whole different view. If you say, "Well, I'm standing here and it would be absolutely impossible to be over there because there's this big cliff and there's this big valley. As I look down, I don't know how I'm going to get across. I got this problem, I got that problem, these things I'm dealing with. I don't know if I could get there." Keep your eye on God and don't doubt. You know that even if you couldn't do it by yourself, that working with God, you can do it. Measure your dream from where God is, not from where you are. Take a leap of faith. That's what this is all about this morning. God's power works in mysterious and wondrous ways. Psalm 42, or Psalm 74:2 says, "We will praise thee, O God, we will praise thee, and we will call upon thy name. We will relate thy wondrous works." And God's power is not only working through our individual mind, but God is working through everyone's mind, even when we're not aware of it. And there will be other people along our way sent by God to help us. All of the changes occurring in our lives and in the world today are urging us to dig into the deepest places of faith. Would you agree with that? Yeah? Yes. And to act from strength from within ourselves, not our fear. You and I have chosen to be on this planet at this very exciting, scary, and critical time, and to draw forth our true spiritual power and help to usher our world into alignment with the light, with a capital L. And such a bold adventure requires that we step into the darkness, and we're in a time of darkness, so that we can illuminate it. And at the same time, many of our old and unconscious internal programs are now bubbling up to the surface. Have you noticed that? That instead of being the positive person that you had been for a time, now all this stuff's coming up. You think it's coming up. Well, it's coming up to be healed. That's why it's coming up. It's time to let it go. Coming up to be healed. That's a comforting thought. And so to accomplish our mission, our goal, our purpose, we must think with the mind of God, love with the heart of God, and act with the strength of God. Your and my destiny is a glorious one. And it's time for us to claim it. It is time. This is our time. Dr. Patrick Overton wrote, "When you come to the edge of all the light you have known and are about to step out into the darkness, faith is knowing one of two things will happen. There will be something to stand on, or you will be taught how to fly." Jesus. Yes, yes. I want to close with a classic literary poem by Martha Smock, former director of Silent Unity. And it's titled, "No Other Way." Could we but see the pattern of our days, we should discern how devious were the ways by which we came to this present time, this place in life. And we should see the climb our soul has made up through the years. We should forget the hurts, the wanderings, the fears, the wastelands of our life, and know that we can come no other way or grow into our good without these steps our feet found hard to take, our faith found hard to meet. The road of life winds on, and we like travelers go from turn to turn until we come to know the truth, that life is endless and that we forever are inhabitants of eternity. Let us pray. Thank you, dear God, for the truth that is now setting us free. Free to be all that you created us to be. And now, in the name and nature of our blessed way-shower, Jesus the Christ, it is done and it is so. May we all affirm together, amen, 3 times together. Amen. Amen. Amen.